All right, let's get into this Unit 2 review. All right, so for number 1, we are going to just kind of use our order of operations, distribute the negative, clean everything up, and solve for x. So we got negative 7x minus 2. We're going to distribute that negative 2. This is going to be negative 2x minus 2. So take the negative, give it to everything. Or the negative 2 and give it to everything. We got 7x plus 3. Over here, we got negative 7x, negative 2x. That's going to be negative 9x, negative 2, and negative 2 is negative 4. All right, so now that we've cleaned that side up, we can now move across the equal sign. Because it's equal, you can move the x to the left or the right. I'm just going to move it to the left, so it's going to be negative 16x minus 4 equals 3. I'm going to add the 4 to the other side, so it's negative 16x plus, or equals 7. And then simply divide by anything that's not x. So negative 7 over 16 will be my answer there. All right, number 2, same thing. We're going to let the negative 2 hang out for a minute and clean up the inside of these brackets. 6x plus 7. I'm going to take the negative 7, give it to everything. So it's negative 7x minus 7 equals negative 5x minus 1. All right, now I'm going to do the negative 2. You have a plus 7 and minus 7, so you know those are going to fall out. 6x minus 7x is negative x equals negative 5x minus 1. And then, of course, negative 2 times negative x is simply 2x equals negative 5x minus 1. Add the 5x, get 7x equals negative 1. X equals negative 1 over 7. All right. Whenever you're dealing with fractions, the easiest thing to do is to simply get rid of the fractions. So in this case, 5 and 6, if I were to work with the fractions, I would need a common denominator. And because of the 5 and 6, that denominator would be 30. So I can take that denominator and multiply the entire thing by 30, and that would allow me to get rid of the fractions altogether. All right, so that would be 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times x is 6x. All right, equals 6 goes into 30 5 times. 5 times x is 5x. And then 5 goes into 5 goes into 36 times. 6 times 9 is 54. So plus 54. Subtract the 5x, you get x equals 54. All right. Let's see. Same concept on number 4. You have 3 and 2. So the common denominator would be 6. All right. So 3 goes into 6. 3 goes into 6 2 times that numerator. So 2x times x plus, or 2 times x plus 9. 3 goes into 6 2 times 7 is 14. All right. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that's minus 3 x minus 3. All right. So now let's distribute. So I got 2x plus 18 equals 14 minus 3x plus 9. Okay, let's clean up the right side. So we got 2x plus 18 equals negative 3x plus 23. Move the 3x over, so it's going to be 5x plus 18 equals 23. Subtract the 18, you get 5x equals 5, x equals 1. Sometimes it just works out. It's something so complicated, usually such a simple answer. And I don't know about you, but I really like it when that happens. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time. All right, so on number 5, you can notice that some of these denominators will factor. So I can take a GCF out of this first one, and I get 2 times x plus 1. And then I have 4 times x plus 1, which means all of my denominators have an x plus 1. So I just need to multiply. And 2 goes into 4. So 4x times 1, or 4 times x plus 1 is going to be my denominator. So I can still do that same concept here and get rid of my fractions. So 2 goes into, the x plus 1s are going to cancel out. 2 goes in 4 2 times, so that's going to be 2x on top, or all that's left. The 4x plus 1 will cancel with that one, so I'm just left with the negative 2x. And then the x plus 1s are going to cancel, so I'm just left with 4 times 2x minus 3. Now, you could do the 4 and go ahead and distribute, all right, but you don't want to do too many things at once, because that's how errors come into play. Okay, so let's distribute that now and clean it up. So I got 2x equals negative 2x plus 8x minus 12. The 2x is going to come, let's clean this up. So I got 2x equals 6x minus 12. Subtract the 6, you get negative 4x equals negative 12. X equals positive 3. Okay. All right. Similarly here, we can factor this y squared minus 9, so that's going to be y plus 3, y minus 3. And as you can see, that is my denominators on the other side. So I'm going to multiply this by that denominator, y plus 3, y minus 3. All right, and on the first one, the y plus 3s are going to fall out, and I'm left with y minus 3 on top. Minus 5. The y minus 3s cancel out, and I'm left with y plus 3. So that's 5 times y plus 3. And then both of these denominators, or the y plus 3, y minus 3 are going to cancel, so I'm just left with 2 here. All right, so let's clean this up. So it's going to be y minus 3 minus 5y minus 15 equals 2. that's going to be negative 4y minus 18 equals 2. Negative 4y equals 20, because you're going to add the 18 to the other side. Y equals negative 5. All right. Now switching gears, we're starting to deal with complex numbers a little bit. So we're going to apply the order of operations and clean this up. So that's going to be negative 2. I'm going to distribute that negative. It's going to make plus 7 and minus 9i, plus 2, plus 7i. And now we're going to combine like terms. Standard form is a plus bi, so we're going to put the I term in the back of it. So we got negative 2 and 7, that's going to be 5, plus 2 is, or you can also look at it as negative 2 and plus 2 are going to be 0, so that's just going to be 7. And then negative 9i plus 7i, that's going to be minus 2i. And there you go. On number 8, same thing. You're just adding, subtracting. This first one, there's nothing going on, so just drop the parentheses. 2 plus 4i. Plus negative is the same thing as minus 5. And then plus 5i plus 4 minus 7i. Okay, so you got 2 minus 5 is negative 3, plus 4 is 1. So you got 1 here. 4i plus 5i is 9i. 9i minus 7i is 2i. So plus 2i. 1 plus 2i. 1 plus 2i. All right, starting with number 9, we're multiplying. So we're just going to fold this out. All right, so that's going to be negative 3 times 2 is 6, or negative 6 rather. Negative 3 times I is negative 3i. Negative 7i times 2 is negative 14i. And then negative 7i times I is minus 7i squared. Now, negative 6, that's going to be negative 17i in the middle. And then I squared is negative 1. So this is negative 7 times negative 1. All right, negative 1, or negative 7 times negative 1 is positive 7. So you got negative 6 plus 7, so that's going to be 1 minus 17i. Okay, so that's going to be 8 times negative 3, so that's going to be negative 24. 8 times negative 6i is going to be negative 48i. Negative 5i times negative 3 is going to be negative 15i. And then you got negative 5i times negative 6i, and that is going to be plus 30i squared. So just like before, we got negative 24, negative 48, and negative 15. It's going to be, or this should be positive 15. That's going to give me negative 33i, and then that's going to be minus 30. Or you can think of it as like plus 30 times negative 1. All right, so plus positive 30 times negative 1, that's negative 30. Negative 30 minus 24 is going to be negative 54 minus 33i. All right, on number 11, you're just still doing the same thing, but I want to draw your attention to that you got the same print. Everything's the same except 1 plus 1 is minus. Let's see how that plays out. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times negative 5i is negative 5i. And then you have plus 5i. And then you have minus 25i squared. Okay, as you can see, the negative 5i and the plus 5i are going to cancel out. That's 1 minus 25. And remember, I squared is negative 1. All right, so that's 1 plus 25. So it's just simply going to be 26. And remember, when this relationship happens, these are called complex conjugates. All right, and this always gives you a positive whole number, or it always gives you a whole number. It may not be positive, but it always gives you a whole number. Okay. Now, when you're dividing, like you are on number 12, you need to multiply by the conjugate. So the complex conjugate that we just talked about. So I'm going to multiply by 7 minus 5i on top and bottom, because whatever you do at the bottom, you do at the top. All right, and this is going to give me, so I'll distribute that 2i on the top. So it's going to be 14i minus 10i squared over, and remember that complex conjugate is just going to give me a whole number, and what I'm just going to square my first and last term, so that's going to be 49 minus 25i squared. Okay, so that's going to be 14i minus 10 times negative 1 over 49 minus 25 times negative 1. All right, and that's going to give me 14i on top plus 10 over 49 plus 25 is going to be 74. Now again, we do want to write this in standard form, so this is going to be 10. I'm going to separate this as well. It's 10 over 74 plus 14i over 74, and I can reduce those. That's going to be, I can take a 2 out of everything, so that's going to be 5 plus, or 5 over 37. It's going to be 5 over 37 plus 7i over 37. Okay, on 13, again, we're focused on the denominator, so this is going to be 5 plus 6i. Okay, so that's going to be on top. That's going to be 6 times 5 is 30. All right, 6 times 6i is going to be 36i. 5i times 5 is 25i. And then you got 5i times 6i, which is going to be 30i squared. And then again, you got 25 minus 36i squared. Okay, so let's clean this up. We have 30 plus, it's going to be 61 plus 61i plus 30 times negative 1 over 25 minus 36, negative 1. Okay, so 30 minus 30 is going to be just 61i on top, and then on the bottom you got 25 plus 36. That's going to give you 61 again. So the 61s will cancel, and my answer is just going to be I. Okay, on 14, same thing. Again, just focused on the bottom. So that's going to be 4 minus 3i. 4 minus 3i. Okay, so that's going to give me 7 times 4 is 28. That's going to be minus 21i. That's going to be minus 28i. And then that's going to be 21i squared. On the bottom, that's going to be 16 minus 9i squared. We've done enough of these at this point to know that I squared is negative 1. So 28 minus 21 is going to be 7. Negative 21 and negative 28 is going to be minus 49i. And then 16 plus 9 is going to be 25. So all I do here is I'm just going to separate. So I got 7 over 25 minus 49i over 25. All right, there's nothing I can take out that would simplify that, so that I just separate it. All right, shifting gears slightly. So we have 2, and I can rewrite this 75 as negative 1 times 25 times 3 plus 5 square root negative 1 times 9 times 3. And the negative 1 and the 25 can come out, so this can be 2 times 5i square root of 3 plus 5 times the negative 1 and the 9 will come out, so this can be 3i square root of 3. And let's just clean this up a little bit. That's going to be 10i cube root of 3, or square root of 3 plus 15i square root of 3. And that's going to give me 25i square root of 3. So when you're adding and subtracting radicals, you have to, it's kind of like denominators. You got to get the denominators to be the same. You need radicals to be the same. So at first, you have a negative 75 and negative 27. You can't do anything with that. So you have to simplify those radicals first, and then you finally end up with square root of 3 and square root of 3. And so then you can add the outsides together. You get 25i square root of 3 there. All right, on 16, remember we need to simplify this first. This is going to be 8i. This is going to be 8i. And so this is going to be, remember that this is square root of 2 minus 8i and square root of 2 plus 8i. So I'm just going to square the first one and the last one. So that's going to be 2 minus 64i squared. And that's going to be 2 plus 64, which is just going to give you 66. Okay. On 17, we need to simplify that 147 inside. So that's going to be, let's see, negative 35 plus square root. It's going to be negative 1 times 49 times 3 all over 7. Okay, so I know that's going to be negative 35 plus 7i square root of 3. And then, of course, I can simplify everything and split it. So this is going to be negative 35 over 7. Well, I'm not going to need to split it because 7 is going to fall out. So that's going to be negative 5 plus I square root of 3. Okay. All right, 18, same thing. This negative 25 is going to be 5i, and the negative 16 is going to be 4i. Okay, so that's going to, let's see, that's going to give me, it's just straight multiplication at this point, so it's going to be 4i times 7, that's going to be 28i, and then 4i times 5i is going to be minus 20i squared. Okay, so that's going to be 20i squared is going to be I squared is negative 1, so that's going to be plus 20. And again, we want to write this in standard form, so that's 20 plus 28i. Okay. All right. On 19, we're just factoring. So I'm going to factor this. Set equal to 0, so that x squared breaks down to x and x. My second sign is negative, so I got one of each sign. All right, so what times what is 24? and subtracts to give you 2. That would be 6 and 4. The bigger factor 6 gets the sign of the middle term, so it's plus 6 minus 4. And then I set each of these equal to 0. Okay, and then solve for x. You get x equals negative 6, x equals positive 4. And that's your answer. On 20, I can take a GCF out first. They both have at least a 2 in common and an x in common, so I can take that out, so 2x. And it's going to leave me with 5x minus 3 on the inside equals 0. And because that outside term has an x in it, I can set both of these equal 0. So that's going to be 2x equals 0, 5x minus 3 equals 0. So divide the 2, x equals 0, 5x equals 3, x equals 3/5. Okay. On this one, we can use the square root method. So I'm just going to divide the 3, so it's going to be x squared equals 25. And then the square root of 25, and remember, you have to consider both positive and negative, so x equals plus or minus 5. Okay, same thing on number 22. So I'm going to do 4x squared. Subtract the 5, you get 196. Divide the 4, you get x squared equals 49. So x equals plus or minus 7. All right. Now, we're still using the square root method here. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that's going to give me 2x minus 5 equals plus or minus 11. Now I'm going to add the 5. This is going to be 2x equals 5 plus or minus 11, and then divide by 2, so you got 5 plus or minus 11 over 2. All right, and so that's going to give you plus or minus 11. 5 plus 11 is 16, so you got x equals 16 over 2. And you got 5 minus 11, which is going to be negative 6 over 2. All right, so you simplify those, you get 8 and negative 3. Okay, on 24, again, we're just factoring. So we have x and x. The second sign is positive, so I look at the first. It's positive, so I got plus plus. And then the factors of 3 are 1 and 3. It's pretty straightforward. So x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 3 equals 0. And you'll find that x is negative 1, x is negative 3. Okay, so there's your answer there. Now, 29 is a prime number, so I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula for this. And remember that the coefficient of x squared is a, the coefficient of x is b, and then the constant term is c. All right, so remember it's opposite b, so negative 10 plus or minus square root b squared. So that's going to be 10 squared minus 4ac, so 4 times 1 times 29. All right, all over 2a, a is 1, so that's going to be 2. Okay, so that's going to be negative 10 plus or minus square root. So that's going to give me 100 minus 116. So I already know that the inside is going to be negative, which is going to introduce an I. So that's going to be negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 16 over 2. Okay, and so that's going to give me negative 10 plus or minus 4i over 2, and I can reduce that. So that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus 2i. And that's your answer. Now, the discriminant can tell you how many solutions you're going to have. Remember that when it comes to, this is quadratics, which is parabolas. Okay, so if you have, the discriminant is the inside of the radical, b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so that's all I need to find. All right, and it's telling you how many solutions you have. So if the parabola is below the x-axis and opens up, then it has 2 solutions. If it sits on the x-axis, it has 1 solution. And if it sits above the x-axis and opens up, it's never going to touch the x-axis, so it has no solutions. And in that case, it does have solutions, but they're complex imaginary numbers. But that's what it's telling you. Okay, so opposite b, or b squared rather, that's going to be negative 7 squared minus 4. A is 1, c is negative 8. All right, so it's going to be 49 minus, or rather plus 32. All right, so it's going to be 81. Okay, so 81, and that, because it's positive, that means I'm going to have 2 real roots, or 2 real solutions. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. On 27, we have 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. 6 squared is 36. 4 times 9 is 36. Is 36 minus 36, which is 0. 0 means you have 1 real solution. Okay. On 28, first thing we need to do is we need to get everything on the same side, so that's 8x squared minus 7x plus 5 equals 0. And now I can do the b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so that's going to be negative 7 squared minus 4, 8 times 5. All right, so this will be 49 minus 160. And that's going to give me negative 111. Okay, so since it's negative, that means I'm going to have two complex solutions. Okay. Now, on 29, we're factoring and solving for the solutions. All right, but it just looks a little differently. So first of all, I can take a 3x squared out. So it's going to be 3x squared out front. And that's going to leave me with x squared minus 4 on the inside equals 0. Now, the x squared minus 4 is the difference of two squares. So it's going to be 3x squared, x plus 2, x minus 2. And again, we're setting them all equal to 0. Okay, so we got 3x squared equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So divide, you get x squared equals 0, x equals 0, x equals negative 2, x equals positive 2. So these three answers are your solution to this problem. On 30, you want to get everything to the same side. So it's going to be 3x to the fourth equals, or sorry, minus 375x equals 0. Then take out GCF, I can take out 3x. And that's going to leave me with x cubed minus 125 equals 0. All right, so 3x equals 0, x cubed minus 125 equals 0. All right, so that's going to be x equals 0 here. All right, x cubed equals 125, x equals 5. So 0 and 5 are my answers here. All right, when you have four terms, the way you factor that is by grouping. So I'm going to group the first two terms and the second two terms, and then I'm going to look inside those parentheses and look at what I can take out. So I can take out an x squared here, and that's going to leave me with x plus 9. And in the second two, I can take out a negative. This is going to be x plus 9 now, after I take out the negative. All right, then both terms have an x plus 9, so I'll bring that out front and put the pieces together. That's going to be x squared minus 1. Now, x squared minus 1 is the difference of two squares, so it's going to be x plus 9, x plus 1, x minus 1 equals 0. So I said each of these equal to 0. X plus 9 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. And you'll find that this is going to be negative 9. This is going to be x equals negative 1, x equals positive 1. And those are your solutions for number 31. All right, now on 32, we start getting into a little more complex problems. To get rid of the square root, we need to square both sides. So I'll square both sides here. And that's going to give me x plus 1 equals 49. I'll subtract, and x is 48. Okay, straight up. On number 33, same thing. I'll square both sides. And that's going to give me 9x minus 8 equals 64. Add the 8. So you get 9x equals 72. X equals 8. Okay. 34 is a little more complicated. We have to move the 10 first. So that's going to be square root of 2x equals x. When you subtract 10, 6 minus 10 is minus 4. Now I'm going to square both sides. But the second side, the right side rather, is a binomial. So I'm going to have to square that. This is going to give me 2x equals x squared minus 8x plus 16. Okay, so that's going to give me, I'm going to move the 2x to the other side. So it's going to be 0 equals x squared minus 10x plus 16. And now I factor that. So 0 equals x. That's going to be, the second sign is positive, so both signs are the same as the first. That's minus to minus. What times what is 16 and adds to 10? That's going to be 2 and 8. Okay, so here's the kicker. Because I squared both sides here, I need to make sure that I check my solutions. So I squared and got two solutions, or multiple solutions, so I need to check this. Just as a reminder, since you squared both sides, you need to check all solutions. So let's do that. Well, first of all, x minus 2 equals 0. X minus 8 equals 0. So I got x equals 2, x equals 8. So I'm going to plug them both in. So if I plug in 2, that gives me 4 under the radical. So that's going to be square root of 4 plus 10 equals x plus 6. And I'm just trying to see if one side equals the other. That x should be 2. So that's going to be 2 plus 10 equals 2 plus 6. So that's going to be 12 equals 8. That's not a thing. So we know that one's not going to work. Okay, and then now we try the 8, and so the 2 times 8 is 16, so it's going to be square root of 16 plus 10 equals 8 plus 6. Square root of 16 is 4 plus 10, 8 plus 6, and it's going to be 14 equals 14. So that one works. So I got two solutions when I did the original math, but the x equals 8 is the only one that works. Okay, on 35, I need to move one of these radicals. So let's move the one that's negative. So I got square root of 2x plus 3 equals square root of x plus 1 plus 1. And now I'll square root both sides, square both sides. And that second side is now a binomial. So this is going to be 2x plus 3 equals, it's going to be square root of, it's going to be x plus 1 plus 2 square root of x plus 1 plus 1. Okay, so I got 2x plus 3 equals, it's going to be x plus 2 square root of x plus 1. All right, I'm going to try to get that radical by itself. Sorry, that's going to be x plus 3 equals 2 plus 2 x plus 1. Subtract the 2, you get x plus 1 equals 2 square root of x plus 1. Divide the 2. X plus 1 divided by 2 equals square root of x plus 1. All right, now, once again, I'm going to square both sides to get rid of that square root. All right, so it's going to give me, on top, that's going to give me x squared plus 2x plus 1. On the bottom, it's going to give me 4, because when you square a fraction, you square the top and the bottom, and I get x plus 1 over here. Now I need to multiply the 4. All right, so it's going to be x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 4x plus 4. Get everything to the same side, x squared minus 4x. That's going to give me minus 2x, and then minus 4 is going to give me negative 3. Factor x. The second sign is negative, so I got one of each sign. All right, so that's going to be plus 1 minus 3. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. The bigger factor 3 gets the sign of the middle term, so it's going to minus 3. And so x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, x equals negative 1, x equals 3. Now, again, I need to check both of these solutions, so I'm going to plug in negative 1, and so that's going to give me negative 2 plus 3 minus negative 1 plus 1 equals 1. All right, negative 2 plus 1, or negative 2 plus 3 is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0, square root of 0 is 0, so 1 minus 0 equals 1. That works. Okay, and then we check the next one. 3, so 3 plus 3, 6 plus 3 minus 3 plus 1 plus 1, so that's going to be 6 plus 3 is 9. All right, square root of 3, or square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, square root of 4 is 2, so 3 minus 2 equals 1. That works. So in this case, both solutions work, so I get to keep both of them. All right, 36. Now, when you raise the power to the power you multiply, you can multiply them by their reciprocal, so 2/3. Okay, so this is going to be x equals, and remember that the radicals can be written as fractional exponents, so this is the same thing as the cube root of 125, all squared. Now, the cube root of 125 is 5, and 5 squared is 25. So there's that. Same thing on 37. I'm going to raise both of them to the 2/3. Okay, so that's going to get rid of the parentheses here. All right, and this is the same thing as the cube root of 343, all squared. The cube root of 343 is 7. 7 squared is 49. Subtract the 2, so x equals 47. All right, first thing on 38, we need to get to 60 of the sides. So it's going to be 2x minus 5 to the 1/3 equals 11. Now, we're going to raise everything to the third power. Okay, so that gives you the parentheses over here. It's 2x minus 5, and 11 cubed is 1331. All right, so you got 2x equals 1336, and then x is going to be 668. Okay. Now, absolute values. We need to get the absolute value by itself, so you got 2x plus 5, absolute value equals 6, and now we set up our problem. So we got 2x plus 5 equals 6, or 2x plus 5 equals negative 6, and we solve for both. So we have 2x equals 6 minus 5 is 1, so x equals 1/2. All right, 2x equals negative 11, so x equals negative 11 over 2. So those are my two answers here. All right, on 40, we have one absolute value equals another. So you take the original 1/2 x plus 2 and set it equal to the original 3/4 x minus 2, or 1/2 x plus 2 equals the negative of that, so 3/4 x minus 2. Now, I can get rid of fractions by multiplying by my common denominators. That would be 4. I'll do that to both sides. Okay, so on the left, that's going to be 2 goes into 4 2 times. That's going to be 2x plus 8 equals 3x minus 8. All right, so I move the 3x over. That's going to be negative x plus 8 equals negative 8. Negative x equals negative 16. X equals 16. And then on the right, we have the same thing. So we have 2x plus 8 equals, don't forget the negative. So this is going to be 4 goes in 4 one time. 1 times 3 is 3, so it's going to be minus 3x. And then that's going to be negative 8. All right, but 2 negatives make positive, so it'll be plus 8. All right, so I'm going to move the 3x over. That's 5x plus 8 equals 8. Subtract the 8. 5x equals 0. X equals 0. So 16 and 0 are my answers. Okay. Here, 2x plus 6 over 3 equals 2. Or 2x plus 6 over 3 equals negative 2. And so to get rid of the 3, I'm going to multiply, so that's 2x plus 6 equals 6. 2x equals 0. X equals 0. 2x plus 6 equals negative 6. 2x equals negative 12. X equals negative 6. And so 0 and negative 6 are my answers here. Okay, now we're dealing with inequalities. So I'm going to distribute, and because it's inequalities, I'm moving all my x's to the left and all my constants to the right. So it's going to be negative 25x minus 10 less than negative 30x plus 5. Move the 30x over, so it's going to be 5x minus 10 less than 5. That's going to give me, I'm going to move the 10, so it's 5x less than 15. X is less than 3. Now, once you get your inequality solved for, you want to graph it. So we got that. 3 is somewhere in there, somewhere there. And because this is less than, I'm going to parentheses shade to the left. Okay, and then once you have your graph, you want your interval. So it's going to be negative infinity. That's going to be negative infinity, 3, parentheses on both. All right, and that's what we're looking for. On 43, we got fractions everywhere. So I'm going to multiply by the common denominator, which would be 24. Okay, so you have 8 goes into 24 3 times, so you got 3 times x minus 2, greater than or equal to. 12 goes into 24 2 times, so you got 2 times x minus 2. And then 24 goes into 24 1 times, that's just simply plus 1. Let's distribute, you got 3x minus 6, greater than or equal to 2x minus 4 plus 1. All right, so move all your x's to the left. So you got 2x, 3, let's clean this up first. 3x minus 6 greater than or equal to 2x minus 3. All right, now, this is going to be x. When I move the 2x minus 6 greater than or equal to negative 3, x is greater than or equal to, add 6, you get positive 3. All right, so again, once you have your inequality, you're going to graph it. All right, so you got positive 3. All right, and this time it is greater than or equal to, so the equal to makes it a bracket, and I'm going to shade to the right. All right, and then I'll do my inequality, 3, comma, infinity, parentheses on the infinity, bracket on the 3, and that's my answer. All right, on 44, we're going to distribute. So we got 20x plus 10 minus 4x less than 12 plus 16x minus 6. Let's clean this up. 20 minus 4 is going to be 16x plus 10 less than, we got 16x. 12 minus 6 is 6, so plus 6. And then I'm going to move the 16x over, and you'll find that you get the x's fall out, and I'm left with 10 is less than 6, which is not true. So this is no solution. And you can write that out by spelling it out, or you might see it as 0 with a line through it. Okay, 45. All right, here we got negative 6x less than or equal to negative 6x plus 24. You move the 6x over and you get 0 less than or equal to 24. That is true. All right, so the x's are gone. So this means that all numbers work. So that's all real numbers. You can spell it out like so. And the interval of that would be negative infinity to infinity. So you can see it either way. 46, we have a compound inequality, so we're going to subtract 3 from all sides. So it's going to be negative 18 less than or equal to negative 3x less than negative 6. Divide the negative 3, and because you're multiplying or dividing by negative, you have to flip the inequalities. So dividing by negative 3, that's going to be a positive 6 greater than or equal to x, greater than or equal to, or greater than 2. All right, but we want this to be least to greatest, so it's 2 less than x less than or equal to 6. All right, we can graph this, so let's do that. So we got 2 on one side, 6 on the other. All right, pay close attention to your signs. One of them is a parentheses, one of them is a bracket, so I got parentheses, bracket, shade in between. All right, and that's going to give me 2 comma 6 bracket parentheses. There you go. On 47, we have absolute values connected to inequalities. So let's get the absolute value by itself. So we got x plus 2. All right, less than or equal to 4. And then here, we set it up, let's say x plus 2 is less than or equal to 4. And because this is an absolute value less than a number, I can also say less than or equal to negative 4, like so. You can only write a compound inequality when it's absolute value less than a number. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. It's going to be negative 6 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. All right, I can graph this. All right, so I got negative 6 on one side, 2 on the other. They're both brackets, and I shade in between. Shade in between. Okay, and then that's going to be negative 6 comma 2, bracket on both sides for my interval. Again, that's what we're looking for. Now 48, I need to get the absolute value by itself, so that's going to be 1 minus x over 2 greater than or equal to 5 minus 3 is 2. All right, so since this is greater than, I can't do the compound inequality like I did on 47. So this is going to be 1 minus x over 2 greater than or equal to 2, or 1 minus x over 2 less than or equal to negative 2. All right, subtract the 1, you got negative x over 2 is greater than or equal to 1. Multiply by negative 2, you get x is less than or equal to negative 2. Here, I got negative x over 2, subtract the 1, it's going to be negative 3. Multiply by negative 2, you get x is greater than or equal to positive 6. All right, so I'll graph that. You got negative 2, you got 6. All right, you're less than negative 2, so it's a bracket, shade to the left. And then you got greater than or equal to 6, so you're going to bracket, shade to the right. And again, you write your interval from least to greatest, and you include the gap in between by using the union symbol. So it's negative infinity to negative 2, bracket, union, bracket, 6 to infinity. Parentheses on the infinities. That's your answer. All right, 2 more, 49. We're going to get the absolute value by itself. So we have 2x plus 7 less than negative 9 plus 7 is negative 2. Absolute values only spit out positive answers. So when is the absolute value going to be, when is a positive number going to be less than negative 2? Never. So that would be no solution. Which again, you can write it with 0 with a line through it. Okay, on 50, get the absolute value by itself. Greater than negative 16 plus 8 is negative 8. When is a positive number greater than negative 8? Always. So you can write that all real numbers. Or negative infinity to infinity. You can write it either way. All right, remember, study this closely. The test comes from the study guide. So if you know the study guide, you can work the test with no problems. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you in the next one.